Good evening. I am your creepy counselor, and you have found yourself here in the Vale. Before I approve your visa to travel to the other side, you will need to take this with you. The creepy counselor disappears beneath his desk, and you can hear him rummaging through things. Ah, here it is. The creepy counselor pulls out a massive flashlight that is about the size of your forearm and hands it over to you. There we go. Now you're all set. But before you go, please remember my advice. If you ever feel uneasy, or if they notice you at any point, run, and I will open the veil for you again. All my life, I've been a huge skeptic. I've never been a huge believer of the paranormal or any sort of supernatural conspiracies. But on October 30th, my life changed forever. It was autumn. The red, orange, and yellow leaves scattered the ground. Everywhere you look, you would either see jack-o'-lanterns on someone's doorstep or a fancy Halloween scary getup covering someone's front lawn. My town was tiny, super tiny. I mean, everyone knew one another. My father, James Farley, was the local sheriff for our town's police station. My mother, Rebecca Farley, was the head chef for the local diner, McGregor's Diner. Growing up as an only child, it was hard for me to make connections. I was always the quiet and reserved kid. I was well respected in the school, but quiet. I spent most afternoons either in the library or at McGregor's, waiting for my mom to finish up her day. After being at the diner for so long, I ended up becoming best friends with Mr. McGregor's daughter, Sophia McGregor. She was beautiful, long blonde hair, petite, and she had these big, beautiful ocean blue eyes. I, on the other hand, was nothing compared to Soph. I had pin-straight, long black hair, green eyes, and was called the emo weirdo because of my appearance. Soph and I were total opposites. She was outgoing and friendly, and I was quiet and kept to myself. Good friendships require balance, right? Soph and I spent every day together. She even took me on our family vacation to Puerto Rico, which we had a fantastic time. It even made me get out of my shell a little bit. Until one summer, when the unexpected happened. I was sitting on my bed, headphones plugged into my tiny pink iPod. The Cure was my favorite band, and they got me through everything. Soph and I were supposed to hang out after she got home from the diner. I was patiently waiting in my room for her text, when I heard my mother rushing up the stairs. "Violet." My mother comes bursting through the door. Her eyes filled with tears, and she held tissues tightly in a closed fist in her right hand. "Honey, we need to talk." I quietly sat up and took out my headphones, just the left ear. My mother sits on the edge of my bed and takes out the other headphone. My mom grabbed me and squeezed me in a tight embrace. She nuzzled her face into my neck and broke down. "Mom, what's going on? Is everything okay?" I was utterly confused. My mom was a tough lady. She never cried. The only time I had ever seen her cry was at my middle school graduation 3 years ago. I'm in 11th grade now, to put that into perspective. I heard sirens wail off in the distance, and I heard a car door slam. Heavy footsteps came barreling up the stairs, and my father steps in. He looks distraught. My mother pulls away from me now, and her big doe eyes are met with mine. She doesn't even bat an eye at my father. "Sweetheart," she whispered, wiping away her tears with her damp tissue. "It's about your friend Soph." My stomach dropped. If I knew my mother was crying, something was off. I sprung off my bed and began to slowly back up away from them. "Mom? Dad? What's going on now?" My father sits alongside my mother and pulls her in, which she did the same, and she huddled into his chest. We, my father said behind a stutter. I could tell he was holding back tears as well. She never made it to school this morning, and we found her backpack in front of June Street. I immediately fell to the floor. I was unable to move, unable to speak, unable to process any thoughts. Not June Street. This can't be. When we first moved to town, the kids in school always talked about the eerie tale of June Street. There was an unsettling urban legend about the street that haunted kids. There were no houses on June Street. No houses, no business buildings, no life. The only thing that lies on June Street was the Juniper Trail. The legend goes to say, stay away from June Street if you value your life. The legend tells that if you go on June Street at a certain time, you will never return. It is almost like a never-ending loop. Once you venture onto June Street, you will never return. There is a part to the legend about the Juniper Trail that is almost as unsettling as the street itself. If you set foot onto Juniper Trail, there are evil entities and evil beings that track your scent and never let you leave. There are some rules to this urban legend that one must follow if they choose to go onto the street. Rule number 1, never go alone. If you go alone, you are more likely to never return. If you bring a buddy, the bad things will not get to you. Rule number 2, don't go past midnight. If you go on the street before midnight, you should be safe. Anytime after midnight, the bad things roam the street and lure you onto the Juniper Trail. Rule number 3, make sure you say the phrase when you even walk past this street. If you do not say the phrase, something possesses your mind and controls your body to venture off onto the street. The saying is, the bad things cannot get me, I am safe. The bad things cannot hurt me, stay in your place. Rumor has it, if you say this saying, the bad entities will not harm you and will let you walk freely. Soph told me about the legend of June Street, and it kept me up for weeks. I had nightmares about me accidentally going onto the street and never coming home. No one even looked for me. Soph assured me it was just some silly urban legend, but it freaked me out. I never really believed in it, but the thought that there was an urban legend in my town didn't sit right with me. The first thing I thought of when I heard they found her backpack in front of the street was that the bad things got to her. We've not spoken about the urban legend since we were about 8 years old. We are both 16 now, so it has been quite some time. I lifted my head up from the cold floor to look at my parents. They were just as distraught as I was. Soph and I were practically sisters. It was like they lost one of their own children. But how? I could not even formulate a small sentence. Why Sophia? Why? That night, I could not sleep. My mind filled with ominous and dark thoughts. Was Sophia still alive? Was she out there looking for help but stuck on the street? Or did she simply just run away from home? The thoughts were making me physically ill. I felt it coming and I sprinted to the bathroom. I grabbed the toilet and started violently getting sick. I had never experienced something this catastrophic in my lifetime. The only death I really experienced was whenever my first pet died. It was a betta fish. I got up, washed my hands, and splashed some cold water on my face. My eyes were swollen shut. It looked as if I had got sucker punched in the face. As I glanced at my saddened expression, it only caused me to break down even more. Sophia was my best friend. Of course, I had other friends, but it was Soph and I against the world. Violet, Violet, Violet. My mother lightly shook my shoulder. I groggily opened my eyes to the sight of my mother, still with tears in her eyes and the pounding of my alarm in my ears. I rolled over, slammed the clock off, and turned back over. My mother sat on the edge of my bed once again and put her hand on my back. Sweetheart, you can stay home from school today. You can even take the rest of the week off since it's Wednesday.
Okay, Mom. Thank you. Love you.
The words crept out muffled as my face was buried in the pillows. All right, I'm going to go make some phone calls to your principal. Are you hungry? I can stop by my work and pick you up your favorite, bacon avocado toast. My mom amped up her tune a few notches. I could tell she was trying to cheer me up, but the sound of food made me want to hurl. I turned my head back so I could see her. I appreciate it so much, Mom, but if I eat right now, I might be sick. I just need some rest. Okay, love, I understand. Be safe and don't leave the house unless you call me first. Of course, Mom. I waited to hear her car drive up, and something in me told me I needed to do something about this situation. I wanted to go find Sophia. I needed to find her. I sat up in my bed and grabbed my phone. I wanted to see if I could notice any danger signs in Sophia and I's last few messages. S. Violet, are you still down to go to the movies tonight? Paul and Trent are going to be there. V. Of course. If Trent's going to be there, so am I. S. He is so pathetically in love with you. Paul wants to make it exclusive tonight, but I said that's weird in front of everyone. Is it? V. I mean, to me, no. But I don't know, Soph. Wouldn't you want that to be more of a private and intimate moment? S. Yeah, I guess you're right. But we are still going. Can I come to your house once my dad's done so we can get ready and leave together? Makes more sense that way. V. Fine by me. Just let me know when you're on the way so I can know to unlock the door for you. My mom's ordering pizza tonight. Want me to save you some? S. She get barbecue? V. Yep, half barbecue for us and veggie for them. S. Ugh, can't wait. Be there soon. Love you, XX. V. Love you more, XX. I sighed and angrily threw my phone across the room. It slammed against the closet door and I heard my dog Cookie get up from her spot and move farther away. There were no off signs about our conversation. If anything, it seemed to be going very well. 1 hour passed and I was so tired of sitting in my bed, staring at the Bauhaus and the Cure posters on my wall, that I decided to get dressed and go to school. My mom gave me the free pass to stay home, but I needed human interaction, even if that involved picking up a pencil and paper. I got out of my black Toyota Camry and locked my doors. Today, I wore a long black pencil skirt, some Dr. Martens, and a white Bauhaus shirt with a black undershirt. I had 2 white mini bows in my hair pinned backwards. I dressed like this every day and got the craziest looks from people. Ew, look at that weird freak. Or my personal favorite, that gothic whore. Kids at school were assholes, and it was just something you had to get over. I ended up getting to school right before lunchtime, so it would at least count as a half day. I sat down in my pre-calc class and went to the back corner of the room. The whole class was so silent you could hear yourself think. Matter of fact, the whole school was silent. Kids had their heads down on their desks, and teachers did not assign work. Sophia was a popular girl. She was loved by everyone. I am sure that everyone was having a silent day because of her disappearance. This is one that would affect the entire town. I leaned forward and tapped on James's shoulder. James is one of my classmates. He was one of those friends you strictly just spoke to in school. I like James. He was a nice kid. We just never made a point to hang out after school. James, why are we all silent right now? I whispered quietly in his ear. For Soph, no one has said a word this entire period, not even Mr. Welsh. As we all sat down, he just pulled out a book, and we all kind of did our own thing. Everyone's been quiet today. Where were you this morning? James spoke back. I didn't feel like going, and then I didn't want to sit at my house all day. Gotcha. James turned back forward and continued to stare at his chemistry book. James was a brilliant student. He never failed a single test a day in his life. If his nose wasn't buried in his book, there had to have been a problem. I sat back in my seat and pulled out my phone. Still nothing. Soph really was missing. I don't think it hit me yet, but again, we don't know for certain where she is. I have high hopes for her. If there's one thing about Sophia, she never lets her guard down. No text from my mother either. I'm glad she didn't get home and realize I wasn't there. She would have a meltdown. 30 minutes passed, and I was sick of being on my phone. I scrolled through pictures of Sophia and I, choking back tears out of fear of embarrassment. I couldn't do it anymore. I needed to find her. I got up out of my seat and stormed out of class. No one said a word to me as I left. I proceeded down the hallway and right out the doors I came through shortly before. Not a single person said a word to me. The faculty and students at my school knew how close we were, so they probably assumed I needed my space. I sprinted to my car, nearly tripping over my shoes. I got in, threw my bag in the car, and headed straight for June Street. June Street wasn't too far from my house, a good 15-minute drive. First, I drove a lap around my neighborhood to see if my mom was home yet, and her car was still absent from the driveway. I took this opportunity to book it there. I pulled my car across the street and locked the doors. The ominous trees that stood tall over the street grew out, and leaves scattered the street. There was a thick, foggy haze glazing the street. Just June Street. It was like June Street had its own weather forecast, its own creations. I always kept a care kit in my car in case of emergencies. It was a small backpack that had everything you needed to survive in the wilderness for a few days. A switchblade, a couple water bottles, some peanut butter crackers along with some dried fruit, matches, a small blanket, and a first aid kit in case of emergencies. Oh, and I can't forget to mention the massive flashlight that was about the size of my forearm. It was still far too light and early in the day for me to get captivated by the street. The legend goes, you must never visit after midnight. Luckily, it was only 12:15, so time was on my side today. I got out of my car, locked the doors, and headed right for the street. I stopped in front of the rusted street sign and took a long, deep breath. I didn't know whether to be scared or to be hopeful that Sophia was in there. It was either she was in there looking for help because she got lost, or she was simply elsewhere. Maybe ran off with a guy for a few days and left a phone charger behind. I mean, who knows? This is all an urban legend the town created. There's no proof it's actually true. I began to walk onto the street and immediately got a sense of nausea. I pulled out my phone camera to start a video. If I was going to be the one to find Sophia, or anything eerie in general, I wanted to be the one to record it and document my experience. I kept walking and walking for what felt like hours. I looked at my watch, 12:20. Only 5 minutes had passed. I could no longer see my car behind me anymore. The thick fog turned heavier as I progressed. June Street was all one straight road, and the other leads out into an abandoned playground. It's basically one huge dead-end road surrounded by trees and weeds, with the only known things being on the road was Juniper Trail and the playground. No one had ever been on this road. The playground is part of the myth. No one has ever reached it. No one knows what actually lurks at the end of the street. I walked for another 30 minutes until the clock read 12:50, and then stopped to take a sip of my water. The fog mixed with the walking was making me feel dehydrated. I took a huge gulp of the water, and then I dropped my cap. Fuck, I cried out loud. My bag had no side pockets, and I was trying to record footage of my experience. I placed my phone on the water on the ground and saw the cap rolling to the left of me. I chased after it, but it kept rolling straight into a rock, and then it fell down. God, how can I be so And I saw it. Right in front of me, a large rotted wooden sign that read, Juniper Trail. Enter at your own risk. We are not responsible for any missing parties. Stick to the trails for your own safety. Do not feed the wildlife. Watch your surroundings at all times. Founded in 1883. My stomach dropped to my chest. I was standing at the infamous Juniper Trail. Reading that sign gave me the chills, and something in my gut told me to continue and ignore the trail. But the other half of me was saying to go explore, get as much potential evidence as you physically can. I ran back to the road and grabbed my stuff. I brushed the cap off of the water bottle and threw it back in my bag. I made sure I recorded the sign to the trail. So eerie and strange. After moments of thought, I concluded to progress forward. There was no way I was going on that trail, never mind in general. I picked up my speed and continued to record. I listened intently for any sorts of unwanted and unfamiliar noise. Nothing. The road was dead silent. Well, this was a waste of my time, I thought to myself, still walking and recording. I was doubtful at this point. It just looked like some old abandoned street that no one lives on anymore. My mouth dropped. I felt my face turn cold. On my life, I saw the sign for Juniper Trail sitting directly in front of me. There's no way. I ended up dropping my phone and shattering the screen. Fuck! I yelled out loud. My screams echoed in the distance, and I bent down to pick up the pieces of glass from my screen. I threw the glass shards in my bag, and before I put my phone in there as well, I checked the time. 5:45. I was so confused. Wasn't it just 12:50? Was I seriously walking down the street for almost 5 hours? It felt like 5 minutes had passed. Whistles from the wind channeled from the trail, and faint noises could be heard. It almost sounded like a bird. Not a pretty bird like a dove or a hummingbird. This sounded like a loon. If you are unfamiliar with a loon, loons are a type of bird that has a howl-like call. It could be mistaken for a little wolf. I felt the hair on my arms stand up, and I decided it was time to leave. As much as I love Soph, I was starting to freak out. She would have done this for me if the tables were turned. But what if I was psyching myself out? What if she got scared of the street and simply dropped her bag in passing? I turned around and started to run. Fast. I didn't look back once. I ended up losing my footing on a rock, but this didn't stop me. This pursued me to go even faster. I kept my head down the entire time and just focused on my breathing. My anxiety and the harshness of the cool weather made running a bit more difficult. I looked up, hoping to see my car waiting for me across the street, and I saw it again. This time, the big Juniper Trail sign was on my right. What was going on? Was I in some weird fever dream? I stopped at the sign of the trail and collapsed. I fought to catch my breath as I looked up to see the sky darken, abnormally fast. It almost looked as if someone covered the sky with a giant cover. I grabbed my bag off my back to check my phone, and I nearly threw up. 11:39. There was no possible explanation for this. I was running for 6 hours, only to be in a giant loop. Out of frustration, I threw my phone across the street and watched it bounce and then shatter onto the pavement. I buried my face into my arms and wailed. I was stuck in some time warp. No working phone, reception, no civilization to phone for help, and most importantly, no Soph. Then I remembered one of the rules for June Street, to go past midnight. If you go past midnight, the bad things will lure you onto the trail and try and make you stay. I stood up and walked over to the center of the trail's entrance. I took a deep breath, said a small prayer to myself, and then began to proceed. As much as I didn't want to, where else could I have gone? I tried moving forwards and backwards, only to be met at that stupid big sign. The trail was like any other trail. Rocky, tall trees hung over the top, and frogs could be heard all around. I reached into my bag once again and pulled out my flashlight. I turned it on and continued. I kept on walking, yet found nothing. I had no clock to check the time, but I am sure that hours had passed by now. Time seemed to move inhumanly fast, almost to a point that it seemed comical. Crash! A loud and heavy bang rang through the trail. It came from in front of me to the left, maybe 2 feet in front of me, in the trees somewhere. Venus, are you there? It's me, Soph. Help me. I'm in the trees. I see you. Come here. My stomach dropped. I got so startled I dropped my flashlight, to which the batteries went flying. I bent down to grab the flashlight, not being able to see in front of me at all. Sophia? There's no way I found her. My instinct was right. She did get lost on the street. Why would she come here? She warned me of this place. Sophia, oh my God, I can't believe I found you. Everyone has been looking for you. I can't come to you. I dropped my flashlight and lost my batteries. Come to my voice. It went silent for about 15 seconds. Soph, come on out. I'm getting you out of here. Venus, I can't see you. Come to my voice. I'm in the trees. I like this trail. It's nice. It hit me. I began to back up slowly, trying to make as little noise as possible. Oh, Venus, I know you're in here. Come and find me. That wasn't Sophia. Venus was the nickname my father gave me as a kid. I never told Sophia about it. Matter of fact, the only people who knew are my mother and my father. That was someone or something else. Venus, I know you're out there. I can hear you backing away from me. I'm gonna get you, and I'm gonna find you. At this point, I turned around and began to sprint. I didn't care that I didn't have a flashlight on me. All that mattered to me was getting the hell out of there. I ran and ran again until I was groaning and holding my side in agony. Heavy and loud footsteps followed me. They sounded like bricks. Something was chasing me. You can't run from me, Venus. I am your friend. The mimicked voice of Sophia turned from her voice to a heavy, raspy, demonic voice, something straight out of a horror movie. I fought back tears as I heard the sounds from behind. Was I going to die in here? My only thought now was my family. I thought of my parents. I missed them. I missed home. I missed Sophia. Then I saw the dim light from the street. The moon shone a dull haze onto the street, and I pushed myself to sprint now faster than before. I ran, and then the sign. I ran off the trail and into the middle of the street. I tripped and fell onto the ground. I was coughing and gasping for air. I fell over onto my side and vomited from exhaustion. I picked my head up and looked back at the trail. Then I saw it. This ugly, malevolent being. It stood at about 8 or 9 feet tall. Its face was pale, with large black sunken-in eyes, with only a white pinprick poke-sized dot for its pupil. It had a large demonic-like smile. Blood poured from its teeth, and it let out an evil smirk and galloped back into the abyss of the trail. I quickly got up and began to sprint again towards the way I came in. I ran and ran and ran. This time, it felt like I was running for days, although this time I never saw the trail on my side, just a long stretch of trees. I stopped to grab a water bottle from my bag, when all of a sudden, the trees began to slowly start to glow. The sun was rising. Sunlight came crashing down. I finished the water, threw the bottle down, and kept going. Running, running. Then I saw my car, a long distance ahead. A silly smile smeared across my face. I watched as a cop car pulled up beside my car. I watched as my dad got out of the car frantically, checking all of my seats for me. "Dad!" I shouted. My dad looked up and fell to his knees. I ran and ran until I finally escaped the twisted maze of June Street. I ran into my dad's arms and sobbed into his shoulder. I was shaking in excruciating pain. My body ached, my head pounded from running and the lack of food and water. "Venus, my sweet girl, your mother and I thought we lost you." My dad squeezed me and held me tightly. "Let's please get you home safe. We found Soph this morning, wandering around the neighborhood. She had no shoes on and her face was bloody. She had a large bite mark on her leg. Once we get you home and rested, you can go and see her." My eyes shot wide. They found Soph. I was relieved. She was found and she's doing okay. But I had some questions for her. My dad and I piled into his cruiser, and he handed me his phone. Sophia texted me, by the way. She told me to relay this message. S. "Hello, it's Sophia. Sorry for the message. My texts to Violet aren't sending for some reason. But I need you to relay this message. Whatever she does, stay away from June Street if you value your life. It's a trap, a death trap. The only way you get to escape is if you pass his game, his killing game. Don't let her go alone. Don't look at the street. Don't think about it. Don't say it unless the curse is yours. If she doesn't follow these circumstances, she will die a slow and painful death."